We have our guest today, Gillian Murphy, Manager of Marketing Operation at GitLab. She's a marketer certified expert and lead data certified. We'll talk all about speed to lead, SLA that actually work, and data hygiene, and how all of that rolls up into real revenue impact. How have you designed your SLA in the journey to ensure that whatever is the agreement, everyone is able to follow that?
I think when you're starting out, you need to kind of start simpler. Start by saying we have like 5 reps in Dublin, 10 in Germany. You need to consider what their working hours are. You need to consider what their public holidays are. And you need to design SDRs, BDRs need to know where to look to, one, find the lead, but also to find the context on the lead. I can guarantee you they're not going to look in 5 different places. They aren't going to click off the lead page or the contact page. They need that information front and center, and that is how that will stop the breakdown of so much communication.
So let me start with fixing the handoff friction, right? Before we get into the detail of routing SLAs, I would love to zoom out a bit. A lot of team I see, whether it's us or brand side or many businesses on an agency side as well, that they struggle with the moment when the lead moves from marketing to SDR. And that's often where the trust breaks, or the leads gets quiet or they die. So I would love to know what's one system design or a mindset shift that you can truly fix when there are handoff frictions, and to avoid those frictions between marketing and SDR teams.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think this is really where you have to start when designing speed to lead. And my biggest recommendation is to have a consistent process for every time you hand over a lead. SDRs, BDRs need to know where to look to, one, find the lead, but also to find the context on the lead. I can guarantee you they're not going to look in 5 different places. They aren't going to click off the lead page or the contact page. They need that information front and center, and that is how that will stop the breakdown of so much communication, because SDRs, BDRs don't have time to be going and finding out what was the context of this campaign, how should I follow up, like why did this lead MQL. This is all really important information that they need in one field or in one place so that they can get in contact with that prospect as soon as possible.
Very interesting. And any one actionable lesson while you have gone through this journey of building a lead handoff system at GitLab? Any one particular actionable lesson you wanna share it with the audience?
I would probably say get in a room with your regional field marketing and your sales dev leadership. I think start having the conversations, start alignment on the same goal, and start speaking about with the same language. Don't be talking about I think we all have the same goal. Like, marketing is driving towards opportunities, sales dev is driving towards opportunities, but we sometimes approach it in different ways, and there can be different terms like MQL, they can be SQL. We all need to know what they mean and what we're talking about when we say MQL or SQL or stage 1 up, etc.
Very true, very true. No, I think it's always very crucial. It's just different teams with different perspective look at things differently. And how do we create that common lens of, at least if they cannot look at from the same lens, that's okay, but that they at least has a visibility and awareness that from which lens the other team is approaching and what they are looking at. So yeah, so true.
So yeah, and to expand on that, I think that's the ops role. Like, we need to know what each other's perspective is. Like, we are the people translating. Like,
yeah,
if I take SLA follow-up. Like, marketing wants to know are MQLs being followed up with, but sales dev want to know which sales dev are following up with MQLs. So it's the same thing, but it's just a very slightly different perspective. And marketing ops needs to know that.
Very true, very true. Now that's the role we as a marketing ops leaders have, which is so true, so true. Okay, moving on. The 5-minute lead window. I love that. Everyone knows timing matters. The faster you respond to the new lead, the better chances you have of closing them, isn't it? Even in our experience, like at Mavlers, we know that if we wait too long to get back to someone, your conversation or your conversion rate is going to drop significantly. Looks like GitLab seems to have this figured out. So would love to know from you that how do you actually make it work so your team responses the lead within 5 minutes? That sounds like a breeze, but without having an overwhelming systems or without having people burning out. I think it's, in theory, super amazing to achieve that, but I'm sure in practically to get that into practice, it's gonna be a lot of challenge you would have gone through. So would love to know your mantra of 5-minute lead window and how have you figured it out at GitLab?
Yeah, I'll start by saying we have not figured it out totally at GitLab. I would love to get it down to like a 5-minute response time, but we're more in the I think our average was maybe around like half an hour, which, not complaining, we're very happy with where we are, but we still have a lot I think we can improve on. I think the thing that made the biggest impact for us was understanding our tool alignment and how they all work together and what that timing looks like. So previously we had a setup with our lead routing tool and it was taking 20 minutes plus for a lead to route from the moment they filled out the contact form to getting assigned to the rep. And that was average. So that there were some times where it was taking over an hour to get assigned, which is just not acceptable from a marketing ops perspective. I started looking out into their tools available and really tried to understand what would work with all of our systems. And because we replaced our lead routing tool, we saw a decrease of routing time by 95%. So we got it down from average of 20 minutes to average of like under 60 seconds. It's nearly too fast now. We don't have all the information on the lead before we route. So now we have other problems to contend with. But it is about understanding the tools that are out there, how your system works, and matching them to get the most out of it.
So amazing. Am I hearing it right? Like 60 seconds and the leads get assigned.
Yep.
Yeah. How would you mind sharing how do you, I'm sure in that lead routing system, but what has been your learning of making sure you are able to route the leads to the right person in the team? Because that's always also a very common dilemma, that based on the lead criteria, where they're coming from, what's their potential level, many factors, right? But then who should entertain that lead? And I'm sure that's a very significant consideration while you're setting up those lead routing tools and systems.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I kind of look at this in two ways. One way needs to be your lead to account matching and what that looks like, because really the most accurate routing is going to be when it looks at the account, because the account will always be assigned, have a BDR on it, have an AE on it, whatever your system is. And then you also need to look at what happens when the lead doesn't match to an account. How do you want that routing to go on, and what do you want to base that routing off? So for those two things, for the lead to account, I would recommend getting a tool that has a lot of flexibility in how you define what your lead to account routing is or matching is, because it's going to change. Like ours changes pretty much yearly when we change how we go to market, and I need to make sure that matches well. And then for unmatched leads, what I do is you need to get alignment with your sales dev directors and decide what exactly you're going to route on. One thing that we love to do is having the same data but different sources. So in practicality, that looks at, okay, we're going to route up the country field, but at the time of routing, what country fields do we have? We might have the country field that came in the form. We might have a data enrichment country field. We might have a company country field. Assign priority. So we want to route based on the company country first. If that's there, route based on that. If it's not there, okay, move on to the data enrichment. If that's there, route based on that. And so on and so forth, to like avoid getting to like a global round robin where like that's not going to produce, like we've seen so much reassignment based on routing that came through global round robin. It doesn't work.
No, so true. Because I think even if getting that lead assignment to 60 seconds with that accuracy, which you have achieved, is commendable, because we were talking about 5 minutes rule, right? Like 5 minutes lead window. But if you're gonna just invest maybe like 20 minutes figuring it out, and even after routing, if it has to reroute to someone else, you often end up losing possibly an entire window of a day. Because sometimes your sales reps are working in different time zone. And if the routing has gone from one geography to other geography incorrectly, like you're trying to fix the response time on lead, but if a lead assignment itself is incorrect, you can end up losing for pretty much an entire day.
I've done the research, I've done the maths, it adds a day. Like we've seen it, they were reassigning it, the person didn't see it for a day. Like it's just not, you need to get your reassignment rate down.
So true. I'd love to know about SLA that actually works. So we all know SLA always looks really good and amazing on paper, but in reality, right, when they often go out of the window, right, I see this is all the time when response time on an agency side or on a brand side, what we define at the marketing team, and as soon as that transition happens to the sales, then in practicality, following those SLA becomes really difficult. So would love to know, how have you designed your SLA that people actually can follow on a practical ground? And how have you, I'm sure it may not be the one go thing, so how have you redefined it in the journey to ensure that whatever is the agreement, everyone is able to comfortably have buy-in and they're able to also follow that?
Yeah, I think it's definitely starting out simple. Like I have worked with SLAs before where we've gotten more complicated. We've said, depending on lead type, you need a certain type of follow-up, which is a great place to get to. But I think when you're starting out, you need to kind of start simpler. Start by saying, we want you to follow up within this time frame. What does that follow-up look like? For us, we say it can be email, it can be call, it can be a LinkedIn message, but you have to do it as part of an outreach sequence. So then the automation is built into it. Like reps are not going to follow up and move a status to a certain status to end the SLA. It needs to be done all automatic, and it needs to be done in a fair way. And what I mean by fair is you need to design the SLAs with thinking, GitLab is a global company.
Yep.
We have reps everywhere. We don't even have a Dublin headquarters or an LA headquarters. We have like 5 reps in Dublin, 10 in Germany. We have everywhere. So you need to consider what their working hours are.
Mm.
You need to consider what their public holidays are. And you need to design a system that takes into account all of these. Because I can guarantee if it's not fair, the reps will let you know about it and they won't follow it. They won't trust it. It won't stick.
Yeah. Time zone, I know, like we work with across time zones. So I often come across that challenge. But I hadn't thought of even different geography having different public holidays and different schedules. Yeah, that's a very interesting one. And is there like any advice you want to give it? I know like holistic review and consideration of a wider team is what I'm hearing while defining an SLA.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to share that which has possibly worked for you?
I feel like that was like the really main part because when we launched, there was just a lot of questions about like, well, how do I change my working hours? And what if I'm off this day? And what if I get assigned a lead at 4 p.m. on Friday and then like the SLA finishes? Or, it has to be like, don't worry, your SLA will pause if you're finished at 4 p.m. on a Friday and it'll start back up on Monday and you'll have 2 hours to follow up.
Sense.
So I think that's what the reps care about when you're putting an SLA on them.
No, that's great. That's great. I think GitLab, right? Global, large team, large operations. I'm sure this is going to be an interesting one. Like scaling without creating a tech chaos. Would love to know, how do you decide which tools to keep, which tools to cut down on, and what to automate, when to automate? Because I'm sure the often most common challenge as marketing operation leaders we have these days, especially when we see tools everywhere, like which tools to adopt, which tools to keep. Any tips, suggestions on how are you managing that?
Yeah, we have a lot of tools at GitLab. I will say it's definitely the largest tech stack I've worked with. And I kind of approach this from two perspectives. One is like you need to know your return on investment on your tools. Even the foundational tools where it's really hard to like kind of quantify what the numbers are, I would still recommend looking at, okay, well, if I remove this tool tomorrow, how much manual work am I putting back on the team? And what's that going to cost me in terms of productivity and hourly rate? Knowing that really helps you understand like, okay, this tool is essential. Like this tool will mean that my team, if I get rid of this tool, this means my team is going to be inundated with manual work. We'll never get anything done. And then the other area is knowing the full scope of all of your tools. So like in the current landscape, it's quite common that tools will share features. So especially now with AI, every tool has AI. Everyone is coming out with their own version of AI email or AI chatbot or so on and so forth. So if you're kind of coming to an area where you have to cut tools, what tool can maybe cover from that side of things? Like if you have to cut qualified with your AI chatbot, does Marketo AI measure up? Could you maybe recreate it within that chat side of things? So yeah, understanding your full scope, but also your return on investment on the tools really can help guide you in your tech stack and managing it all together.
Very true. And I think that people effort aspect is also very crucial, right? Like one is the actual business impact aspect, right? That any tools, how it's gonna change the performance of the overall team. And second is that efficiency aspect, that which of these tools is going to make the overall team very effective and efficient. So yeah, that's great. That's great. That brings to another question, always very crucial for any marketing operation leader. the data hygiene. So would love to know what's your best approach of keeping your CRM and your marketing automation data clean and reliable as you scale? Because I know and would love to have maybe one or two examples of how do you keep the data clean and consistent across, let's say, Marketo or Lean Data and Salesforce.
Yeah, I think it's super tough. Like it's something all of us struggle with. My preferred system and what we prefer to do when we like launch a new tool that has maybe data aspects or will allow, like we just launched Outreach, for example, that has the ability to like create accounts, create leads, create contacts, all of the above. And I think what you need to do is kind of keep it shut down at first. Like keep it like, okay, no, you can't create accounts. And then once it's launched, you can then start kind of exploring like, okay, what if we allowed reps to create accounts from these sources only? And we automate that process. So let's say Zoom Info, we only allow them to create accounts, prospects from Zoom Info, and then we know we're happy with that source. I prefer to keep it like that, but at the same time, I do know there are sources outside of data enrichment tools that we like. They're just as valuable. Like if a rep gets an email through a reference, that's super valuable that we want to allow for them to create. So we do allow for those scenarios. And we've created a system within our Salesforce that will allow them to, let's say the lead already exists, but there's maybe an element of the lead we've recorded it wrong, it's out of date, like let's say their address data or their country. We'll allow the rep to have, there's a field they can input, hey, this is the new updated country that they're in, and we'll ask them to provide a source, and we will like validate that maybe monthly to be like, oh yeah, that was from email. If there's anything that we don't like, as in let's say it's they googled it and that's what they came up with, we can then reject that and say like, no, we're getting rid of that, that's not what we want to keep in our data cleanliness.
Interesting. What are your practices around quality check of your data accuracy or consistency? Like oftentimes I know like it's in a large operations, it's easy to define things once, but then what are your triggers or what metrics you keep a watch on, which brings that timely visibility to you or the team where data accuracy start fading away? Maybe because of some interlinking systems got broken or people not been updating it correctly. So are there any suggestions there that how do you keep, let's say, is it kind of where you keep a recurring practice of auditing it, reviewing it? What are your best practices around that?
Yeah, currently our best practices are really like, okay, we need to sit down and review this on a monthly basis. And that's only certain elements like that admin field that we allow them to edit. But that's where I would say is a really interesting use case for AI. Creating an AI agent to kind of raise those kind of errors or anything out of the norm to you, so you're not spending that time monthly to go through it. That's something I'm looking at next in terms of like routing. I want to create an AI agent that will kind of raise any errors to me instead of me. Like I have a routing monitoring dashboard that I check daily or weekly.
Yep.
I want an AI agent to do that and then just tell me like, hey, there was 5 MQLs that errors populated on them, like go check this out, sure. So yeah, that's kind of like where I see a lot of benefit with AI.
That's where I think We all talk about AI, but I think getting AI to the real use cases of kind of avoiding any of those manual repetitive tasks is are the super amazing and very helpful, immediately impactful use cases for businesses. So
Yeah, exactly.
great. Okay, moving on. I would love to touch base on again talking about a bit of alignment into marketing and SDRs, BDRs team. How do you keep marketing and SDR team aligned after the handoffs, right? Can you describe like if there are any two-way feedback systems, any recurring cadence you guys follow to ensure that there is an open communication thread? Because as you mentioned that transparency, trust is super crucial. And for that, I think some sort of two-way communication is very crucial for both of them to have their perspective on table. So what cadence, what practices you follow to ensure that that alignments always stay intact?
Yeah, I think this is where automating the lead lifecycle really comes into play. So, for example, I mentioned it before, but reps are not going to update lead statuses. They're not going to update Excel sheets with detailed explanations of why that rep or that prospect didn't work out. So this is where you need to leverage automation within Salesforce flows, or we use triggers in Outreach to update lead statuses based on what's happening with the lead. So the rep has just reached out, update the lead status.
Okay.
The prospect has replied and there's a two-way conversation happening, update lead status. The prospect has said no, or has like finished without any reply, update the lead status to reflect that. Because in those scenarios, then marketing, once they know the definitions of each of those lead statuses and how it gets into that lead status, they don't need to talk to anyone, to their reps, to say like, oh, what's happening with this campaign. They just need to pull a report and say, oh, like 50% of them are in two-way conversation. Amazing. Maybe I'll reach out and see how I can support getting it to a stage 1 up. Or all of them ended up in recycled. Maybe this is where you might want to have like a conversation with your rep to say like, okay, what do you think could have been done better? And getting that like on the ground feedback will be so helpful.
Great answer. Thanks for answering that. Another one is about success metric of marketing operations leaders or business impact alignment. Leaders don't just want campaign statistics anymore, right? We all know. Board doesn't want that. Even sales leaders don't pay much attention to our campaign statistics. They would rather see clear line from operations to work into actual pipeline and then revenue. And that's true. Right? Either it is a brand or you are an in-house team member at a brand or you are an agency. So keeping that in mind, what reporting setup or what metrics helps you to prove the real business impact of your marketing operation initiatives?
Yeah, it's definitely a tough one because there's so many elements to marketing operations that sometimes it isn't easy to measure. But I think that's where it's super important to then measure what you can. So one that I find has like, and always relating it back to the bottom line of like whether that's opportunity or revenue creation. One that we have recently kind of started working on more that really shows how healthy like our routing is and how SLA, the impact of SLAs is one, we want to start consistently reporting on reassignment rate because that will really show like, okay, it's getting to the right person at the right time. No, it's not being passed on. And then also we did some research on SLAs and what the impact of our SLAs were. And that is, we found that our reps were 74% more likely to open a stage 1 up if they met the SLA that was in place. So that straight away is like, oh, okay, then there's no question there. It's like, okay, then reps need to meet their SLA. We need to make sure our systems are all working in alignment so that reps are 74% more likely to open that up.
Yeah, like sometimes those data and those data points are just in front of us. It's just matter of like, how do you leverage it? How do you present it and align people and align teams with that? So
Yeah.
amazing. So amazing. Great. I'd love to move on and learn a little bit more about building revenue operations, resilience in lean times. A lot of teams right now are hearing higher targets, fewer people, smaller budgets, and now operations sits right in the middle of all that pressure. So when resources are tight, what are your first 3 operational improvement areas which you would focus on?
Yeah, I think that is definitely tough, but I think I would have to go back to foundational. For me, the foundational is always going to be data, lead scoring, and lead routing, because these are the elements that you need to make sure if times are tough and we're running less campaigns, every lead MQL that comes through the system is going to be so much more attention on it, make sure it's working. And you don't want to say like, oh, those MQLs just weren't assigned because of XYZ. You need to make sure all of that is working perfectly. So if times are tough and I can only focus on 3 things, those are the 3 foundational things that I'm going to work on.
Wow. So data, lead
Scoring.
and lead routing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of making most out of what you have on the table
Yeah.
rather than worrying and chasing more from outside. Like, how do you make most out of which factors are in likely higher control of
Yep.
the business, right?
Yeah.
Like running more campaign and getting more leads is always an external dependency aspect. But once leads are in the system, either in the form of MQL, SQL, or lead, whatever you call it, how do you make sure they have been given utmost attention by having data accurate, lead scoring precise, and lead routing with that 60-second lead assignment, which is amazing. Yeah, so great, so great. Okay, there's other big theme in operation is the career path. And, like moving from being the person who runs the tool and now you managing actually a team and shapes the go-to-market strategy. So we'd love to learn from you, like how can marketing operation leaders move from being execution focused to becoming a strategy partner in their businesses?
Yeah, I think this is something that is evolving as the marketing ops function is evolving. Like marketing ops has only really been around for the last 10, 15 years maybe. And I think part of it is like you need to know how to translate what you're doing to the bottom line. So I mentioned before, we did research on how SLAs drove the bottom line of achieving stage 1 opportunities. You need to know what your stakeholders care about and translate that technical knowledge you have and the impact you're having into how it matters for that stakeholder. If your stakeholder is finance and they care about the budget, you need to translate, okay, well, this tool is going to bring in 3x ROI because of XYZ. If it's sales, this SLA is going to cause, if they meet this SLA, it's going to be 74% more likely to convert. all of that information you have, you need to know how to translate it to the bottom line.
Amazing. Gillian, I think that's all we have. Such an insightful session and few really good actionable insight. I'm gonna take that away and try to implement and see as an agency where all and on whichever clients campaigns we work, how can we roll those learning out. But I'm sure a lot of people listening to this is gonna be taking a lot of things away, which they can start implementing and looking at their operations from a different perspective. So really, really appreciate all the insights you've been sharing, and thanks a lot for an amazing, insightful session.
Thank you so much for having me. I loved having this chat.